It sounds like the plot of a science fiction horror movie. A weird mutant virus, deadlier than the plague, suddenly appears on Earth. People start dying, first by the score, then by the hundreds.
This is a 1983 segment of Channel 9's long-running current affairs program, 60 Minutes. It's reporting, of course, on the AIDS epidemic, which reached Australian shores in the early 1980s.
Doctors are baffled. All the resources of modern science can't help them find the cause, let alone the cure of the epidemic. The public begins to panic. It sounds like science fiction, but it's not. The name of this new plague is AIDS, AIDS, and it's now begun to appear in Australia.
By its peak in 1994, more than 5,000 people, mostly members of the gay community, are estimated to have died from complications relating to the virus. The AIDS Council of New South Wales was founded in 1985 to support men and their loved ones through the crisis. But Australia's world-class response and advancements in medical treatments means AIDS is no longer a death sentence, nor is it considered a public health issue in Australia. And that means the AIDS Council of New South Wales had to pivot. Stephen Rice is the Australian's New South Wales editor. Ricey, you've been reporting on the influence of an organisation known as ACON. Who are they and where did they come from?
Well, I guess the short answer is that ACON is now Australia's most successful trans lobby group. But that's a very short explanation. The longer one, and it's quite interesting because it certainly didn't start out that way. ACON was originally the New South Wales AIDS Council, set up in the 80s to combat HIV AIDS, and did so very successfully. They did great work. They saved a lot of lives. But as medication started to improve the life expectancy, decrease the death rate from AIDS, the New South Wales AIDS Council kind of completely lost its mission, and then when marriage equality came in, they lost even more of their mission, and so they pivoted. And the way that they've pivoted, as have some of the similar organisations around the world, they've pivoted very strongly to focus on trans rights. And again, some of their work is very laudable. They go into workplaces and they try to make sure that trans people aren't bullied, that that they're treated with the same respect that every other employee is. But then there comes a problem because the other part of the organisation is really pushing a very extreme kind of trans ideology.
Let's talk about that. How did ACON go from what was ostensibly, as you said, a group set up quite quickly to support gay men at the height of the AIDS epidemic to what now appears to be a trans lobby group?
A few years ago, when ACON was starting to lose its core purpose, some of its leaders got together and they came up with a master plan, essentially. They poured a lot of money into it. They did a lot of lobbying, and they came up with a plan to pivot. First of all, to really push this trans ideology, so that trans women would be allowed to take part in women's sport, so that things like puberty blockers and hormone treatment would become a regular part of health treatment, so that trans women would be allowed into any kind of women's organisation. So that was the if you like, the ultimate mission. But the way to get there was to invent this thing called the Australian Workplace Equality Index, and that's like a scoring mechanism. So each business and each government department has to sign up, submit to a series of questions about what it's doing to improve the workplace conditions of trans employees. If you agree to give your trans employees gender-affirming leave, that's what used to be called sex change, it's transition, now called gender-affirming. If you give your employees gender-affirming leave, you'll get 3 points or 4 points. But there are certainly, as I've said, the thought behind protecting vulnerable trans people is good, but really a lot of this mission is about changing the way that government institutions and businesses actually operate externally. It's the idea is not just to make life better for trans employees. The idea is to change the way these organisations operate so that health departments actually change the way that they offer medical treatment to people, that universities change the way they allow research to be done and the way that they allow lecturers to teach students, and the way that a media organisation like the ABC is allowed to talk about trans issues, and that's where the difficulty comes in.
Earlier this year, the ABC was awarded platinum status by ACON. What do you make of that feat?
I think it's the culmination of many years of effort by the ABC to be seen to be inclusive. The problem is that they're not just being inclusive in the workplace, and the problem isn't just that they're treating trans people in a fair way on screen, in their programming and in their news. It's that they are not allowing any kind of contrary information to be broadcast. They're not covering some of the most critical news events that are happening both in Australia and around the world. You know, like the Cass review in the UK, which found that puberty blockers were a real problem, and in fact closed down the Tavistock Clinic, which was the UK's major clinic for doing those things. Almost not reported at all here. Really significant events not reported. And journalists at the ABC are telling me that the reason for that is that if they did report those things, it would be seen as non-inclusive. It would be seen as an attack on trans people, and journalists are, some of the journalists there are reluctant to do stories that might be seen in some way to be transphobic. These emotions run very high on this topic, as we know, and the influence of an organisation like ACON, which is now working in hundreds of, has been invited in to hundreds of businesses, hundreds of dozens of public institutions, universities. It's in media organisations, and in particular, I think where the problem especially comes in is when it's as it is in education departments and health departments, and so this influence is really widespread.
Ricey, one of the organisations that you have found to be deeply embedded with ACON is New South Wales Health. ACON supports the argument that all transgender people should have access to gender-affirming care, as it's now known. What have you been able to find out about the interaction between New South Wales Health and ACON?
What you find, again, is that on a superficial level, ACON is simply making sure that trans employees working in New South Wales Health, for example, or in the Federal Health Department, are treated fairly, not bullied, and given the same kind of respect that they should be given, that every employee is given. But actually what you find when you drill down is it's doing a lot more which can potentially be quite damaging, and that's to take away the independence and the impartiality of government departments and businesses when they're actually looking at the way that they should be operating. And in particular, a health department, for example, really needs to be basing its medical treatment on best practice and not on fulfilling the ideological, agenda of a scoring outfit that's giving them points so that they can appear to the world to be inclusive of trans rights. And similar things are happening in education departments where trans ideology is starting to become incorporated into curriculum. It's happening in universities where you can't, in some universities now, you can't submit a research project unless it's in inclusive language. If you try to get a research project up that doesn't meet the specifications of groups like ACON, you won't get it through. So it's really having, quite a profound effect.
What do we know about how ACON is funded? Where does its money come from?
Well, it charges each of these companies and government departments about something like $12,000 a year, which is obviously fairly insignificant for most of these institutions. It gets most of its money from the taxpayer, particularly from the New South Wales taxpayer, even though it's now a national lobby group. But anywhere between $17 and $20 million a year. And it also gets big grants from, for example, the federal health department recently gave it $7 million for an awareness campaign for cervical cancer, which was pretty extraordinary. ACON had only asked for $500,000 in the first place, and without a tender, get awarded $7 million by the health department, which just happens to be a platinum member of ACON's diversity scheme. And these kind of awards, they may be perfectly proper, but they really demand more scrutiny than they're getting.
And have you been able to scrutinise that decision-making process in that example or others?
So I have been able to get hold of some documents, such as the one that revealed this $7 million grant, but most of it is hidden. Most of it is hidden in layers of bureaucracy. And, for example, I submitted a Freedom of Information request with the New South Wales Health Department for emails between their staff and ACON staff. And their Freedom of Information department came back to me and said, sorry, we can't do that. There are too many. And I said, well, there can't be that many. 14,000 emails between ACON staff and New South Wales Health Department staff. That's the level of interaction, that's the level of influence that ACON holds with some of these government agencies, and it's also information that we're not privy to.
ACON has been met with resistance by other groups within the LGBTQ plus community. Who are they and what do they say about its policies?
As you say, there are a large number now of gay and lesbian groups who are very much opposed to what ACON is doing. A lot of these groups like ACON, were originally set up for the benefit of gay men and lesbians, and now are almost exclusively working for the rights of trans people. And a lot of gay and lesbian people, it's not that they, just resent suddenly being pushed to the side. It's the fact that their rights are now being infringed upon.
People representing those groups, gay and lesbian groups, say that the actions of ACON or its policies are undermining the original purpose that the AIDS Council of New South Wales was set up for, which was to serve those communities in a really, really difficult time. What are some of those experiences that they've told you about that they've encountered in recent times?
Well, for example, you have lesbian groups now that have been stopped from holding their own events because they don't want biological men allowed into their groups. They're same-sex attracted people, and they want other women in their groups, and they don't feel that they're not sexually attracted to biological males who identify as women, but they're being forced into a situation now where they have to accept that or not hold those meetings. Lesbians are saying to me, well, look, once upon a time, these young women would just have become lesbians. Now they think they're trapped in the wrong body and they should actually be men. And they're having treatment, medical treatment, sometimes surgery to fix it, to fix something that, does it really need fixing? Or if nature had been left to its course, would these young women just have, become same-sex attracted women and not gone down this very medicalised path?